Welcome back, everyone. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at loops, both for loops and while loops in Python. Now, Python rarely uses while loops. Sometimes you do need it, but mostly you're going to be working with for loops because they're so intelligent and easy to work with, and they can, loop over collections, which is wonderful. Without, the developer knowing how many elements are in the collection, which is quite useful. Let's go ahead and create a brand new Python 3 notebook. And we're going to call this one 010 loops. We're going to start by using or taking a look at for loops. Loops over collections. Let's create a courses list, history, my favorite topic, subject, math, the next favorite, art, the next, music, let's say physics, and my least favorite, English. If I wanted to loop over this and actually print this stuff, I just use a for loop, and there is a key value or placeholder, if you will. Some people call it a handle, C, whatever you want to call it, in courses. So for each element of this list, C is going to get that value during the loop, and I can actually print it, for instance. And it's that easy. If you want to use traditional loops where you go over numbers, you do it by saying for I, for instance, in range. And then there's a beginning and an ending. But if you only put one value, such as 10, and let's say print I and I squared, which is, you write it like this, you can see it actually gives you 0 through 9. As before, we learned with collections, the last value is excluded. So I could have done this as 0, comma. I get the same results. As before, if you do the difference between the two, that's how many values you're going to get out. So if I were to change this to, let's say, 2 to 7, 7 would not be included, 2 itself would be included, and I should get 5 values back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So those are the 5 rows that I got back, which is what was expected. Let's go ahead and take a look at the third option in here. So I can say in range for I in range. Let's pick a larger range, say 2 to 30. What I can do is I can put a third option over here, and that means start with 2 and do every third element. Say print I. If you take a look, we have 2, then plus 3 is 5, plus 3 is 8, etc. Notice again that we made it to 29, and of course we don't do anything with 30. So it's that easy to use for loops. As an example, one more time, that strings are in fact collection of characters, I can take a message, and let's say the message is it is now coffee time. I can actually loop over this message. I can say for M in message, print M. And I apologize, I'm thinking Python 2, you need those parentheses. You can see that it actually went over through each character and printed that character. It is now coffee time, like that. So just remember that. Let's take a look at while loops. As you might expect, while loops, of course, if you've worked with any other language before, they loop over a bunch of expressions until a particular condition becomes false. So if I say C is equal to, let's say, 10, and then do while the condition C is greater than 0, let's go ahead and print C squared. Something has to change here. So I'm going to do a minus, have C be decremented. And you can see that we start with 100, 81, etc., and eventually we stop at 1. It is quite common for while loops to create what we call an infinite loop. So if I forget to do this condition right here, Let me comment it out. You can see that this becomes an infinite loop. My kernel is busy constantly, so I have no choice but to go to kernel here and say interrupt it, and then fix this. Okay, so if you ever run into a situation, just remember that there's probably an issue with your while loop. There are a couple of special keywords in Python. Let's take a look at break and continue keywords. Quite useful, we'll be using them. So for I in range, let's say 10, remember this goes from 0 to 9. And I meant to do a simple enter, I did shift enter. I'm going to do a conditional if I is double equal to 7. So if I is equal to 7, it is a comparison. Remember, single equality is an assignment. I'm going to break. This is going to stop the loop completely. Of course, if that is not the case, I'm going to print I squared. So if you take a look at this, we're going to make it all the way to 6. When I becomes 7, then basically the loop stopped. This is the difference between break and continue. Now if I take a look at removing break and putting continue, what's going to happen is we're going to get all the way to 7. Because it's 7, it's not going to do anything, and then it will continue back at 8. So you notice that we made it to 6, which is 36. Because of 7, it actually stops, it does a break, and then it continues with the next iteration, which is the number 8, 8 squared, of course, being 64. So hopefully you can see the difference between the two. That's it about loops. We're going to be using quite a bit of loops in our programming, as you will see, and mostly for loops. Thank you for being a great audience, and if you're enjoying these, please share them with your loved ones and friends.